Welcome to Breakthrough with Champs. Today I have my speech coach and 1995 world champion of public speaking, Mark Brown. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Natsio. It's my joy to be here with you today. You look wonderful.
Hi. Thank you. You too.
Thank
and
you.
all the medals behind were.
Oh, those are my sons when he was
okay.
high school thing in the band. But
okay, it's not you. You got enough.
I do get one or two trophies at home, with my championship back in 1995, a gazillion years ago in the previous millennium.
It's so scary to think that.
I know.
Yeah. We had so many coaching sessions, and we often digress and talk about lives, right? And I really enjoy that.
Oh, certainly, yes. I mean, I think, even though we are professionals, what we share from our lives can really help other people and give them perspective. It's not all about work and business. It's about the lives that we live every single day. Yeah,
exactly. And I never asked you, though, how you became a professional speaker. And I'm curious to see that when you came to the States, you're a native of Jamaica, and you came to the States when you were 18 years old with only $40 in your pocket.
That is true, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, my dad we were in Jamaica, family of 5, mom, dad, 3 siblings. And my dad chose to start over in the land of opportunity, the USA, which meant at age 47, starting from scratch. And he sent me to New York to live with his sister, who was the divorced mother of 2 young children. And all he could afford to give me back then was $40. But he had the faith and belief I would survive regardless, with a place to stay and a way to start off. And I found a job in 24 hours working for a bank in New York City.
Oh, wow.
Bank teller. That led 6 months later to a career as a programmer, a computer programmer, mainframe trainee in January of 1981. And from there, I learned the craft. And over time, I ended up at Reader's Digest in 1992 in December. And within 5 days, I had attended my first Toastmasters meeting. And that led to public speaking. Within 2 years of that, I was the world champion. And my career changed full-time in 1998 from being a mainframe computer programmer to a full-time professional speaker. And I owe that to my involvement in Toastmasters.
And how did you find Toastmasters?
Well, interestingly enough, when I went to Reader's Digest in 92, and I was told, Mark, we have a Toastmasters club, it triggered a memory in my mind, because back in the late 80s, one of my uncles, who was a Supreme Court judge in Jamaica, had come to New York to visit, and he was wearing a Toastmasters pin. I said, what's that? He said, it's Toastmasters. What's it all about? He said, public speaking. And I discovered my uncle, the late Justice Courtney Orr, was Jamaica's first Toastmaster. It was he who had brought the program to Jamaica in 1984. So he was literally the first Toastmaster in the country. And when I heard about Toastmasters, I said, well, my uncle does that. I'll check it out. And I was so intimidated. I was a guest in my Toastmasters club from December of 92 until April of 93. I finally signed the application, paid the dues. I've been a member of Toastmasters, dues-paying, card-carrying member since April of 1993.
Wow. And you still go to Toastmasters?
I
all the events, right?
Yeah, I attend my local club, the Jamaican Toastmasters Club. I paid my dues. And every year I attend several district conferences. I'm asked to present as a guest speaker. And also every year I attend the Toastmasters International Convention, where I serve as the voice of God and the convention announcer for the last several years. I've only missed 2 since 1994.
That's amazing.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and talking about serving, I always feel this compassion and love that you give to people around you. And yeah, I mean, seriously. And your mission is helping humans excel, right?
Yes.
And any episode that led you to find your mission or your life purpose?
Well, back in 1993, in the summer, I had collapsed in a local shopping mall parking lot with chest pains. I was diagnosed with multiple pulmonary emboli, which means I had several blood clots in the lungs. That was the good news. The bad news was there was one massive clot inside my heart. I was given at best a 50-50 chance of survival. And a lot of things come into perspective when you're facing death.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, my 2 children, my work, my life. Was I simply spinning my wheels? Was I doing my best? Was I giving all I had? Was I serving well? And I realized that many things that I thought were important really were not. And having a wonderful family, serving the God who I love, and blessing people was much more important to me. I began to develop my skill as a communicator. I really committed to Toastmasters. I was coaching sports, and I found that if I can help somebody, whatever, in any small way as I pass along life's road, that's what I need to do. As a matter of fact, in 1995, when I entered the Toastmasters speech contest, the speech I gave at club, area, division, and district was called "That My Living Shall Not Be in Vain," based on a song which says, if I can help somebody as I pass along,
Mm-hmm.
if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can show somebody he is traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. It was all about using your life to help other people in whatever way possible. That became my mission. How can I help others to be the best that they can be while striving continually to be the best I can be? Not just in work or in enterprise, but in life, in our relationships, to stay healthy, to be spiritually strong. So I have maintained that philosophy since I recovered, and I continually strive to help people to achieve excellence in whatever way I can while pursuing excellence myself.
That's amazing. And I think there could be so many different approaches and methods to do that. But for you, you do that, you achieve your mission through speaking or sharing your stories.
Yes, I do keynote speeches, I do workshops, I do youth presentations, and the goal is to help individuals and organizations achieve excellence in communication, in leadership, in performance, and generally in life. And I also do so, as you know, through one-on-one professional speech coaching to help speakers become better every single day. And I love what I do. I feel blessed to be able to do it. To me, I've been gifted with an opportunity, and I can't wait to share it.
Yeah, great. That's the great gift you got, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So you travel all over the world speaking or giving coaching probably too. But when you talk to the international audience, going to so many different countries, how do you pick a topic or how do you resonate with people with diverse audience?
I have learned one very important truth. Regardless of international borders, people are people. And if I can find a message that inspires individuals, I will share it. If I can find a way to connect with them on a personal level, that's what I use. I mean, there are their husbands, their wives, their mothers, their family members, they're entrepreneurs, they're business people. They share similar experiences. So any story I can share that's a common human experience, that's what will connect with the audience. I was in Berlin, Germany in May of this year, and I gave a talk, I haven't given a whole lot, called The Dash Between the Dates, where the dash represents the time between our birth and our death, and that dashes our lives and how we live our lives. I first shared it internationally in Bahrain back in 2001. One of my friends there continually refers to that speech. Back in May, before I was finished, the audience gave me a standing ovation, and I wasn't even finished yet. It was kind of scary, but I realized I've made a point of connection with audiences in Europe, in Asia, in North America, in Africa, in Australia. So whenever I travel internationally, what is the common bond that connects humans across ethnic, national, and international borders? That's what I always strive to do. And if I can find that place, that sweet spot, that can help everybody achieve excellence, no matter where they are from or who they are.
Right. So by sharing your story about related to the common topics that human beings face, you can actually touch their hearts and grab their hearts and make connections.
And that's it. If we can connect with any audience, that's the first thing. If we can connect with them, then they'll feel an affinity. They'll listen to us. They'll respond to us, and we'll actually build a relationship from the platform. And in almost every talk I give, there's mention of my family, my wife and my 3 children. It's a natural outpouring of who I am. I can't divorce myself from that. And my family is My family,
That'll be pathetic.
because somebody knows, my wife, they can relate to my kids, who's a parent, they can relate to being a parent. Or being a sibling. They can relate to being a son. I mentioned my dad in China, and they were in tears with my dad's story. The theme of that conference was, who's a hero? And my dad is my hero. I tell the stories of my dad, and people are connecting emotionally. And that's what it is. We all have common experiences.
Right.
We can tap into that and then share our key points and our messages. Even in international professional situations, we find common bonds, and that's what we need to use to link people together and share our stories, our messages, our lives, our principles, the ideas, tips, tools, techniques. They all come back to one thing. Establish a relationship, build a connection, and it's a wonderful way to get it done.
Yeah, exactly. And as I'm speaking more and more as a professional speaker, I feel the same way too. And very often people make a mistake by thinking public speaking is a one-way communication, but it's totally not. It's a conversation. It's a two-way conversation, and you give something and they give something back to you. And you have to keep this momentum going and have a conversation, right?
Definitely. And sometimes you'll notice, I know you have noticed this, the audience reaction almost leads you in a direction where you play off of them, their energy, their response, they respond in a certain way, and then it almost fuels you to continue along the path you've chosen. But then you get to understand a particular audience, you know what they are like, you know what they like, and you're able to respond to that in a more powerful and meaningful way. And the result shows after the presentation. You're in the hallway, people are milling about, they're coming to talk to you, they're telling you their story, and they say things like, Natsuyo, when you mentioned your daughter there, I know exactly what that's like. My daughter is 5 years old. She does the same thing as your daughter.
Right.
And you see in their eyes how they like, you've connected on a human level. So let's not think only of, I'm here to give you information and tell you that you must learn these principles. Yes, but within the framework of your story and your life, it makes a big difference, because I maintain that to you. As much as the audience wants to hear you, they also want to know you.
Right, exactly. But have you ever had some times when the audience's response threw you away, or some funny experience, or in international audience they were laughing at some jokes that Americans would understand, something like that, some funny story like that?
The funny thing is, that happens to be more in America than abroad. They laugh in Korea, they laugh in Bahrain, they laugh in Qatar. But I had a program for an association here in the USA, in Florida a few months ago, and Andrea was with me. It was a trucking association, and I was on the platform, and I recall asking the president before I went, I said, do I wear a sport coat and a tie? He said, listen, if you wear a coat and tie, they'll think you came to the wrong convention. Come casual. I said, great. So I had a button-down shirt, slacks, and I was there, and I was doing my thing, and I was telling my stories and using my humor. My wife in the front row with me, and I'm going, and it's like a comedian in a nightclub, and you hear crickets. I felt nothing seemed to be working. I had an hour with them, and the hour was done. I got polite applause. I sat beside Andrea. I said, honey, I don't know what happened. She said, honey, these people are like dead. And they had a break. And the president came to me and he said, listen, don't let them fool you. These are tough old truckers. On the outside, they'll show you nothing. On the inside, they're getting the message. And they invited us to stay behind for their beachside party and celebration with fireworks that evening. At the fireworks celebration, one by one, individuals and couples began to approach me quietly, individually, personally, and share how much my presentation moved them. And I was completely blown away. I felt I completely lost the audience because the reaction in the moment was very muted, polite. And I thought, oh my gosh, even the best of us bombed. I felt I had bombed because I did not get the reaction in the moment. Right. But I found out afterwards. They're very private. They'll tell you afterwards, but not in public. And that was a relief. But sometimes even the best of us make mistakes, and we have things happen that we want to forget. I went to an association, an education association, and I had met one of the individuals who's on the board for the state. of the Education Association. I had met her through Toastmasters. And she had said, oh, I haven't seen you in so long. I'm going to be there. Can't wait to see you. It was great. And I went to deliver my keynote speech, my closing keynote speech. There must have been 500 people there. And I gave my talk. And in my talk, I talked about her. And I thanked her. And I made reference to her. I said, thank you so much for what you've done. I appreciate that. And I got some nervous laughter. Because I look up in the room, I can see the lady, white hair, glasses. And she says, no, I'm not her. In front of the entire audience. I said, wow, doppelganger, what a lookalike. Thank you so very much. Great. Okay, I guess I'm getting older. And I had to play it off. But it was, right. I identified the wrong person from stage in front of 500 people.
Oh.
And I had to play it off. But
right.
like, oh my gosh, I guess they'll never ask me back, which is possible. But these things happen, you know, just a simple case
right.
of mistaken identity. It happens to the best of us. You know, you never know when things can go wrong. I used to give a short speech at an induction ceremony for new board members of this organization, and I got up and I faced the board and I thanked them and I said, "It's so great to see you." And I made all these wonderful remarks, and I found out later that was the old board. The new board hadn't been placed on the platform yet.
Oh.
I addressed the audience. I mean,
yeah, that happens.
The lessons are make as much research, do as much research as you can, find out who the main players are, ask questions, have the pre-event conference call with the organizers, you know what's going to happen, go through the agenda minute by minute, make sure you know who the players are. And nowadays, excuse me, with modern technology, with modern tech, I go on LinkedIn, I see the photographs of the people who are there, I go to the website, I know
so
who
you can match the face and name.
I put them in my mobile phone, so when I meet them, I say, it's good to meet you, Frederick. I'm Mark. Good to meet you. Yeah. So know who the people are.
Right.
Do the research.
That's important.
Involved, and it's all normally done in a pre-event conference call with the client to make sure you don't make no mistakes. I did those early in my life. The one, of course, was recently in Florida. But most of those, I learned from the mistakes, and I apply the principles later on to try to avoid these embarrassing moments. But humans, I do know this. It isn't a matter of if, but when something will go wrong in the future. And you just go with it. It's part of the business. It's part of life. And you learn from it and you move on.
Right. I guess that's that's really important to think that I'm going back to the point we were talking about earlier. It's not a one-way communication, but it's a two-way conversation. So when you think you are the one talking to 500 people and all these 1,000 eyes are staring at me, then it's so scary. But if you feel that you're having a conversation with them one-on-one at the same time in the same room, then you feel a little more relaxed and you can go, you know, if something happens, you can go with it and you're more calm about it.
Yes, and one way to create that atmosphere, when you get to an event, you as a speaker, if you get to meet individuals beforehand, have a conversation the night before, if it's a morning keynote, or if it's an afternoon keynote, get there early enough, see what's going on, be aware of their surroundings, the atmosphere in the meeting, talk to people, because they'll feel more comfortable when you can make a reference to them during your presentation. And very often I'll meet the president or the organizer and I'll say, listen, I plan to make a reference to you during my talk. Do you mind? I'm going to say this. Do you mind if I say that? And I said, no, go ahead. In one particular case, I talked with the president of the association, and it was their 75th anniversary. And I said, you know, it's so great to be here. I'm so honored to be here with you to celebrate this year's 75th anniversary of the organization. And Phil, as chairman, I know you're probably thrilled to be here too, even though you were here for the first anniversary 75 years ago, right? And you're still looking good after 75 years. And they laughed at him. He knew it was coming because he has gray hair. And they all laughed together. It broke tension. And they realized I was familiar with Phil, and he and I were cool, and they were able to go with it. They'll meet 3 or 4 leaders, and I'll say, hey, Tracy, last night over dinner you mentioned so-and-so. And they feel, oh, this guy's having a conversation with us. He knows some of our main players.
Right.
And those are techniques I use to have that conversation with the audience, not just a lecture at them, but an experience that we share together. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So meeting people and getting to know them beforehand helps.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah, great advice. So one final question is that we talked about connection with
Yes.
the audience. So what is the number one thing you need to do to connect with your audience?
For me, the connection takes place before I go on the platform. That has to do with my conversations with them, finding out what the culture of that audience may be. For example, I spent 20 plus years talking to youth audiences in middle and high schools, mostly middle schools. So I became very familiar with the middle school atmosphere, having had kids that age myself. And so very early on, I was able to connect with middle school students. I used to teach a middle school Sunday school class at my church in New York a gazillion years ago. So I was familiar with that atmosphere. Similarly, with any audience, what's important to them? What do we have in common? If I fly to Seoul, South Korea, what could I possibly have in common with a South Korean audience? I have conversations before I get there. I find out what's important to them, because as a presenter, I'm there to serve them, not to show them how good I am, how great I am, how eloquent I am, but I'm there to offer them tips, tools, techniques, principles, suggestions, ideas that'll help them in their industry, in their business, to inspire them, to encourage them, to uplift them. I have to understand something about them and then connect them with me. So for me, establishing a relationship through initial conversation, through research about the organization, to find out what makes them tick, finding out why they're there, what's the purpose of the meeting, and how do I fit all that. To me, it's about establishing a relationship first, and that builds a connection. I use stories and references that connect to them. I use language that they're familiar with, that they can understand. I talk about pursuing excellence. When I'm dealing with a trucking organization, I talk about hitting the road, getting it in gear. You know, what are the roadblocks, bumps in the road, that kind of thing. I talk about, you come to a point where you stop, you chop the wheels, you put it in neutral, pull the brake up. I use references that appeal to that particular audience. And that's how they know I'm there to serve them. So I encourage everyone, serve your audience, love your audience, establish a relationship with your audience. They'll be more willing to listen to what you say, apply your techniques, and who knows, it may lead to a lasting relationship.
Great. And that way you can help humans excel.
That's the goal.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Great advice. And I got inspired, and I hope you are too, all of you watching. So thank you so much, Mark, for joining us.
My pleasure.
It's great to have you. And thank you for watching. And we have more great speakers coming on to interview. So keep watching.